Picture a quiet morning in 1992 on a sprawling Amish farm in New Holland, Pennsylvania. The sun rises over fields of corn, casting long shadows across a simple wooden porch. Inside, the Lapp family, Aaron, Miriam, and their 5 children, Eli, Michael, Sarah, Ruth, and little Daisy, are starting their day. Aaron, a skilled woodcarver, sets aside a half-finished toy horse for his youngest, Daisy, promising to finish it after the weekend. The air smells of fresh bread, and laughter echoes as the kids chase each other through the yard. This is a family rooted in faith, bound by tradition, living a life untouched by the modern world. But by the next morning, they're gone, vanished, all 7 of them, without a trace, leaving behind only a handwritten note on the kitchen table. Gone for the weekend. Visiting family. Back Monday. Monday came and went. So did weeks, months, and years. The note, written in Aaron's careful script, was the last anyone heard from the Lapp family. Their farm stood empty, the animals cared for by neighbors, the woodcarving tools gathering dust. The tight-knit Amish community, reluctant to involve outsiders, clung to hope, praying their kin had simply left for a new life. But deep down, the questions gnawed. Why would a family so devoted to their faith and land abandon everything? Where could they have gone? For a decade, the mystery haunted New Holland, marked by solemn remembrance services where loved ones gathered, year after year, to honor the family they couldn't forget. Then, in 2002, during one of those gatherings, a single photograph changed everything. A detail, hidden in plain sight for 10 years, caught the eye of Aaron's brother, Levi Lapp. It was small, almost insignificant, but it unraveled a chilling truth, a web of betrayal, greed, and murder that would shake the Amish community to its core and expose a trusted friend as their greatest enemy. Welcome to the Crime O'Clock, where we dive into the shadows of history to uncover the stories that refuse to stay buried. Tonight, we're taking you on a 2-hour journey into one of the most haunting mysteries in America's heartland, a tale of a vanished family, a decade of secrets, and a clue that brought justice to light. Settle in, because this is the story of the Amish enigma, and it's one you won't forget. Before we unravel this mystery, hit that like button if you're ready to dive into a true crime story like no other. And if you're new to the Crime O'Clock, subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a tale from the shadows. In the comments, tell us, have you ever heard of an entire family disappearing without a clue? What do you think happened to the Lapps? Drop your thoughts below, and let's get started. In the heart of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the Amish live a life apart. No electricity hums through their homes. No cars crowd their gravel roads. Instead, horse-drawn buggies clatter along, and lanterns cast a warm glow over family dinners. It's a world of faith, simplicity, and community, where every neighbor knows your name and every hand helps raise a barn. In 1992, the Lapp family was the heartbeat of this world in New Holland. Aaron Lapp, tall and bearded, was a man of quiet strength, known for his woodcarving as much as his devotion to God. His hands could turn a block of oak into a toy horse, so lifelike it seemed ready to gallop. His wife, Miriam, was the soul of their home, her kitchen always fragrant with fresh bread, her laughter a melody that drew the children close. Their 5 kids, Eli, 13, serious and studious, Michael, 11, always trailing his father, Sarah, 9, with a knack for quilting, Ruth, 4, who loved picking wildflowers, and little Daisy, just a year old. The family's joy filled their farm with life. Together, they worked the land, prayed in Pennsylvania Dutch, and lived by the ordinum, the Amish code that kept their world steady. But on a crisp fall morning in 1992, that world shattered. It was a Sunday, the kind of day when the community gathered for church, sharing hymns and stories. Aaron and his family were expected at the service, but they never arrived. Neighbors, puzzled but not alarmed, assumed they'd left early for the weekend trip mentioned in a note found later that day. By Monday, though, worry crept in. A neighbor boy, tasked with feeding the Lapp's animals, found the farm eerily still. The cows were milked, the chickens fed, but the house was empty. On the kitchen table, scrawled in Aaron's careful hand, was a note. Gone for the weekend. visiting family for church matters. We'll return Monday. Don't worry about the animals. Arranged for neighbor boys to help. Aaron. It was simple, straightforward. The kind of message you'd expect from a man like Aaron. Practical and to the point. But Monday passed, and the Lapps didn't return. Neither did they send word. The Amish of New Holland are people who keep to themselves, wary of the outside world, the English, as they call it. They don't rush to phones or police stations when trouble stirs. Instead, they prayed, searched, and waited. Levi Lapp, Aaron's younger brother, wasn't there when it happened. He'd been in Ohio, apprenticing with a furniture maker, chasing a dream of crafting tables as fine as Aaron's carvings. When word reached him, he was stunned. Aaron, the brother who'd taught him to whittle, who'd promised to visit him in Ohio, gone? It didn't make sense. Levi packed his bags and returned to New Holland, guilt heavy in his chest for not being there when his family needed him. He joined the community's efforts, checking with relatives in Ohio, Indiana, even Ontario. No one had seen Aaron, Miriam, or the children. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. The community turned to the one outsider they trusted, Officer Paul Breener, a local policeman who'd earned their respect. Breener was a familiar face, always polite, never pushing the Amish to modernize. He'd helped mend fences, directed traffic during harvest, even joined a barn raising once, his sleeves rolled up alongside the men in black hats. As the police liaison for Amish affairs, he led the investigation. He questioned neighbors, searched the Lapp farm, and studied the note. But after a week, with no signs of foul play, no blood, no struggle, no witnesses, the case hit a wall. Breener concluded it was a voluntary disappearance. Maybe the Lapps had left to join another Amish community, he suggested, or faced some private conflict no one knew about. The Amish, reluctant to entangle with English law, accepted this, or tried to. They didn't push for more answers, believing gods would reveal the truth in time. The case went cold, filed away in a drawer at the New Holland police station. Years passed, and the Lapp farm stood frozen in time. Aaron's wood-carving tools rusted on a shelf. Miriam's quilts gathered dust. The children's toys, a corn-husk doll, wooden horse, sat untouched, relics of a life interrupted. Levi stayed in New Holland, taking over the family's furniture business, but the weight of his brother's absence never lifted. He'd walk past Aaron's empty house, wondering if he could have done something, anything, to bring them back. The community, too, carried the wound. They began holding an annual remembrance service, not in the meeting house, but in a family home, to keep the L ascendancy closer. Each year, they gathered to pray, sing hymns, and share memories of Aaron, Miriam, and the children, clinging to hope that faded a little more with every passing season. By 2002, a decade had passed, and the mystery remained unsolved. The remembrance service had become a ritual of grief and faith, a way to honor the family they'd lost. Levi hosted it that year in his own home, the chairs arranged in neat rows, the table covered with precious mementos, Aaron's favorite hymn book, Miriam's quilting thimble, a drawing by Sarah, a toy horse carved for Daisy. The community filed in, men in black suits, women in prayer coverings, their voices soft with Pennsylvania Dutch hymns. Minister Yoder spoke of accepting God's will, even when answers eluded them. But as Levi looked at the faces around him, his mother Esther, cousins Samuel and Rebecca, Miriam's friend Mary, he couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was still out there, waiting to be found. Little did he know, that very day, a single photograph would crack open the mystery, revealing a darkness no one could have imagined. That's the start of the Lapp family's chilling mystery. Have you ever heard of a family vanishing without a trace like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if this happened in your community? And stick with us, because this story is about to take a shocking turn. The morning of the 2002 Remembrance Service was heavy with the weight of 10 years lost. Levi Lapp stood in his living room, surrounded by the faces of his Amish community, their black hats and prayer coverings a somber reminder of the family they'd gathered to honor. The air carried the faint scent of wood smoke and the soft murmur of Pennsylvania Dutch hymns. On the kitchen table, mementos of Aaron, Miriam, and their 5 children lay like sacred relics. A hymn book worn from Aaron's hands, a thimble Miriam used for her quilts, a faded drawing by Sarah, a wooden horse Aaron had carved for little Daisy. But it was a photograph, tucked in a quilted album crafted by Levi's late wife, Rebecca. That would change everything. Rebecca had passed 3 years earlier, her heart giving out under the strain of grief for her missing in-laws. Before she died, she preserved the family's memories in that album, stitching each page with care, as if to hold the lapse close when no one else could. For a decade, that photograph had sat unnoticed, its secret hidden in plain sight. As the service wound down, the crowd thinned, leaving only the closest family and friends. Levi's mother, Esther, her eyes red from quiet tears, passed around the quilted album. Daniel Zook, a neighbor who'd known Aaron since boyhood, paused over one image. It was a snapshot taken just days before the disappearance, capturing the Lapp family on their porch. Aaron stood tall in a straw hat. Miriam cradled baby Daisy, and the other children, Eli, Michael, Sarah, and Ruth, lined up, their smiles bright against their plain clothes. Behind them, laundry flooded on the line, typical Amish scene. But Daniel's brow furrowed as he pointed to something in the background. "Levi," he said, his voice low. "What's that?" Levi leaned in, squinting at the photograph. Among the dark blues and blacks of the family's clothing hung something out of place, a fluorescent yellow-green vest, its bright fabric glaring against the muted tones. The word police was faintly visible, stitched in reflective letters. A chill ran through Levi. He knew that vest. It belonged to Officer Paul Breener, the policeman who'd been a friend to their community, the man who'd led the investigation into Aaron's disappearance. Breener had been a constant presence back then, always respectful, always helpful. He'd fixed fences after storms, directed traffic when buggies clogged the roads, even joined the men at a barn raising, his laughter blending with theirs. But Aaron had once confided in Levi, years before, about something troubling. It was during a late-night talk in Ohio, when Levi was still apprenticing. Aaron had mentioned men in suits visiting his farm, pressing him to sell his land for some vague development project. "They don't understand our ways," Aaron had said, his voice tight. "They think money can buy our roots." Levi had brushed it off then, thinking it was just English folks being pushy. Now, staring at that vest in the photograph, the memory felt like a warning. Levi's mind raced. Why was Breener's vest in Miriam's laundry? The Amish didn't wear such things, and Miriam, meticulous as she was, wouldn't leave wet clothes on the line for a weekend trip. Rain could ruin them, bugs could nest, the sun could fade them. No good Amish housewife would risk that. The photograph was taken the morning they left, Daniel confirmed, noting the damp edges of the clothes, still dark with moisture. Levi felt a knot tighten in his chest. Something wasn't right. He excused himself and drove to Aaron's abandoned house, just 10 minutes down the rural road. The place felt like a tomb, dust thick in the air, pale rectangles on the walls where pictures once hung. Rebecca had packed away most of the family's belongings after hope had started to fade, storing them in a wooden chest in the master bedroom. Levi knelt before it, the hinges creaking as he lifted the lid. Inside were Aaron's work shirt, still shaped by his shoulders, a toy horse worn smooth by little hands, and there, folded neatly on top, the fluorescent police vest, clean and carefully washed, with P. Breener stitched on a small patch. Levi's hands trembled as he held it. He remembered Breener's easy smile, his assurances during the investigation that the Lapps had likely left of their own accord. But now, the vest felt like a lie stitched in fabric. Levi pulled out his cell phone, a rare concession for his furniture business, and scrolled to Breener's number, saved years ago after the officer helped with vandalism at his shop. The call went to voicemail, Breener's familiar voice asking for a message. Levi hung up, unable to find words. He needed to see Breener in person, to look him in the eye and ask about this vest. He drove to the new Holland police station, a modest brick building where an American flag snapped in the breeze. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and wax, but the desk officer, Jenkins, said Breener was out on field duty. Maybe back in an hour, maybe not. Levi declined to leave a message. This wasn't something for a note or a call. It was personal, a thread of truth he had to pull himself. As he left the station, Levi's thoughts churned. He decided to check Aaron's farmhouse, a separate 40-acre property Aaron had owned, about 15 minutes further into the countryside. But halfway there, passing through a stretch of Amish farms, he saw something that stopped him cold. At Jacob Yoder's farm, two men in dark uniforms stood by a black truck, their voices raised. Jacob, an elder with a graying beard, backed away, his hands raised defensively. "This land is not for sale," he said, his accented English firm. "It's been in my family for generations." The men pressed closer, one sneering about progress and the economy, the other tossing a business card at Jacob's feet. Levi pulled over, his heart pounding. He recognized the scene. It was too much like what Aaron had described all those years ago. "Is there a problem?" Levi called out, stepping toward them. The men exchanged glances, their uniforms unmarked, no badges, no logos. "Just a business discussion," one said smoothly, but Levi stood firm beside Jacob. "He's asked you to leave," Levi said, pulling out his phone. "I'll call the police if you don't." The men retreated to their truck, but not before one muttered they'd be back. Jacob picked up the card, plain white, with only Land Development Associates and a phone number. "They've been here all week," Jacob said, his voice weary. "Wanting my land, talking of development, just like 10 years ago." Levi froze. "10 years ago?" he asked. Jacob nodded. "Before your brother vanished, he had men like these at his farm, too. He was worried, spoke to the bishop about it." The words hit Levi like a stone. Aaron's disappearance, the vest, these developers, it was all connected, a shadow from the past stirring to life. Levi promised to tell Breener about the harassment, but as he drove away, the police vest on his passenger seat seemed to glow with a truth he couldn't yet grasp. He didn't know it then, but he was about to step into a darkness that had been buried for a decade, a darkness that would lead him to the heart of his family's fate. Levi Lapp's heart hadn't stopped racing since he left Jacob Yoder's farm. The plain white business card from the developers sat heavy in his pocket, its words, Land Development Associates, burning in his mind. Jacob's story about men pressuring Aaron 10 years ago, just before his family vanished, felt like a ghost whispering truths Levi had ignored too long. The fluorescent police vest, tucked on his car's passenger seat, glowed like a warning. Officer Paul Breener, the man who'd eaten at their tables, who'd promised to find Aaron, was tied to this somehow. Levi couldn't shake the memory of Aaron's voice, years back in Ohio, tense with worry about men who wanted his land for their own glory. As he drove toward Aaron's farmhouse, the 40-acre property his brother had cherished, Levi felt a pull, not just to check the land, but to chase the shadow of a truth he'd missed for a decade. The farmhouse was a 15-minute drive deeper into the countryside, past rolling fields and buggies clattering along gravel roads. Levi was halfway there when he spotted a police patrol car parked on the shoulder, its engine idling. Through the open window, he saw a familiar figure in sunglasses, Officer Paul Breener himself. Levi's pulse quickened. He pulled over, the vest in his hands, and approached. Breener removed his sunglasses, his eyes tired but warm with recognition. "Levi Lapp," he said, his voice smooth as ever. "Good to see you. How are you holding up?" Levi forced a smile, mentioning the remembrance service, then held up the vest. "I found this at Aaron's house, in a chest Rebecca packed. It's yours, isn't it?" Breener's face flickered. Surprise, maybe, or something sharper. He took the vest, turning it over, his fingers lingering on the stitched P. Breener. "All right," he said, his tone too casual. "Completely forgot about this. Must have been from years ago." Levi pressed, keeping his voice steady. "How'd it end up at Aaron's, Paul?" "The morning they left, it was in Miriam's laundry." Breener rubbed his jaw, his eyes darting to the road. "That morning," he said, "I stopped by to talk to Aaron about neighborhood safety. Miriam, bless her, invited me in for breakfast. Spilled some vegetable soup on my vest, clumsy me. She insisted on washing it, Said it'd stain otherwise. You know how she was, Levi. Never took no for an answer. Levi nodded, remembering Miriam's stubborn kindness, but Breener's story felt thin, like a quilt stretched too tight. What kind of safety talk? Levi asked. Breener's gaze flickered again, this time to a black truck passing by. The same truck Levi had seen at Jacob's farm. Just routine stuff, Breener said, his voice tightening. Some developers were pushing to buy land back then, raising concerns. I was checking in, making sure Aaron wasn't pressured. The mention of developers hit Levi like a spark. Aaron had told him about those men, their slick promises and veiled threats. Before Levi could press further, Breener's radio crackled, and he shifted, his demeanor suddenly brisk. Got to run, Levi. Thanks for returning this. Let's talk more soon. He handed the vest back and pulled onto the road, his patrol car trailing the black truck at a careful distance. Levi stood there, the vest heavy in his hands, Breener's nervous glance at the truck replaying in his mind. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. He got back in his car and drove to the farmhouse, the weight of Aaron's warning from years ago growing heavier with every mile. They want our land for their own glory, Aaron had said. Levi hadn't listened then, but he was listening now. The farmhouse stood weary under a towering maple Aaron had planted, its branches scraping the roof. Levi unlocked the door, the air inside thick with dust and memory. He was sweeping mouse droppings from the kitchen when a car pulled into the driveway, a sleek sedan, out of place among the Amish fields. A man in a crisp suit stepped out, studying the faded for sale sign Levi had posted years ago. Good afternoon, the man said, his smile practiced. I'm Mr. Davidson. Is this property still available? Levi nodded, wary but curious. It is. I manage it for the family. Needs work, though. Davidson walked through the house, his eyes sharp, less interested in the peeling paint than in the land itself. What's your price? He asked, naming a figure half what Levi had hoped. Levi protested, but Davidson spread a map on the dusty counter, outlining his plans for a country retreat to attract tourists to Amish country. Levi's eyes caught something on the map, a circled area in the mountains to the north, marked with strange symbols and the words Amish Heritage Memorial. He pointed to it. What's this? Davidson's smile faltered, and he quickly folded the map, hiding the marking. Nothing to do with this property, he said, too fast. Let's focus on the farmhouse. But Levi's mind was racing. That memorial, the developers at Jacob's, Breener's evasiveness, it was all connected. Davidson offered a compromise price, pressing Levi to follow him to his office to sign papers. Levi hesitated. The map's image burned in his mind, but agreed, sensing this was his chance to learn more. He followed Davidson's sedan to a modern glass and steel building, jarring against the pastoral landscape. Inside, a receptionist in a dark, unmarked uniform, eerily like the men at Jacob's, handed Levi a visitor form. As she typed, Levi glanced out the window and saw the black truck from Jacob's farm pull into the lot, followed by Breener's patrol car, both heading up a mountain road behind the building. Levi's instinct screamed. He wanted to a display area, where a model under glass showed a transformed valley. Amish farms replaced by shopping centers, housing developments, and roads. At the mountain's peak stood a grand structure labeled Amish Heritage Memorial, a tourist trap dressed up as a tribute to a people it seemed to erase. The placard read, "Preserving the memory of Pennsylvania's plain people." Memory, not presence, as if the Amish were already gone. Levi's blood ran cold. He backed toward the door, mumbling an excuse about an urgent errand, ignoring the receptionist's protests. As he sped out of the lot, he saw the dust trail of the black truck climbing the mountain road. Aaron's words echoed louder now. Their own glory. Levi didn't know what he'd find, but he knew he had to follow that truck. He shifted gears, his car straining up the rough mountain road, the trees closing in like a tunnel. Every mile took him deeper into a mystery he wasn't sure he was ready to face, but there was no turning back. The truth about his family, about Breener, about the land, was waiting at the top of that mountain. We're at the edge of a chilling discovery. What would you do if you stumbled onto evidence like Levi did, pointing to a trusted friend's betrayal? Would you confront them or keep digging like Levi? Drop your reactions in the comments, and let's see how this unfolds. Levi Lapp's hands shook as he crouched behind a stack of lumber at the mountain construction site, his heart pounding like a hammer against his ribs. The air was thick with the scent of fresh-turned earth and pine, but all he could focus on was the horror unfolding before him. Officer Paul Breener, the man who'd shared meals with his family, stood with two developers in dark, unmarked uniforms, the same men who'd harassed Yakabioter. Their voices carried on the mountain breeze, casual and cold, as they discussed a fake Amish memorial meant to draw tourists, while erasing the living community below. Then came the words that stopped Levi's breath. We stored them here, the whole family, plus a few others who got too curious over the years. One of the men gestured to a patch of ground marked with orange spray paint, where a backhoe had just clawed away the soil. From the shallow hole, he pulled a bone, unmistakably human, long and weathered, and handed it to Breener. Breener turned it over in his hands, his face unreadable, then dropped it back into the dirt. You see, the developer said, grinning, this valley will be ours. Shopping centers, housing, tourist traps, something productive, not just farmland rotting in the hands of backwards people. And you'll help us, won't you, officer? Just like before. Levi's stomach churned. Aaron, Miriam, Eli, Michael, Sarah, Ruth, little Daisy, buried here, under this obscene monument to their memory. His family, murdered, and Breener, the man they trusted, was part of it. Levi fumbled for his cell phone, his fingers trembling as he started an audio recording, capturing the developer's chilling words. We'll clear out the rest, kill some if we have to, scare the others into leaving. He forced himself to stay calm, slipping away from the site, shedding the borrowed hard hat and vest he'd used to blend in. As he reached his car, hidden in a turnout, the weight of what he'd heard threatened to crush him. But he couldn't falter now. His family deserved justice, and the truth was finally within reach. Halfway down the mountain, his phone caught a signal, 2 bars, enough to act. He pulled over, his voice shaking but steady as he dialed 911. My name is Levi Lapp, he said. I need to report a murder, multiple murders, and police corruption. There's a construction site up the mountain. They're building a fake Amish memorial. I just saw them dig up human bones. Officer Paul Breener is involved. He's working with developers who killed my brother's family 10 years ago. The operator's voice was calm, professional, but urgent. Sir, these are serious accusations. Are you certain? Levi's voice cracked. I saw the bones. I heard them talking about killing more Amish families. Please, send someone. Dig where they dug. You'll find the evidence. He gave the road markers he'd noted, his eyes fixed on the horizon where dust still lingered from Breener's patrol car. Within 15 minutes, sirens pierced the quiet, growing louder as police cars raced up the mountain. Levi followed, his car struggling against the rough road, his mind replaying the image of that bone in Breener's hands. At the construction site, chaos erupted. Police swarmed the area, the lights flashing against the half-built memorial, its peaked roofs a mockery of Amish simplicity. Breener emerged from the structure, his face paling as he saw the officers. The 2 developers tried to slip toward their black truck, but Levi, fueled by a decade of grief, pulled his car across their path, blocking them. Breener approached, his voice sharp with false authority. Levi, what are you doing? Move your vehicle. Levi stepped out, his eyes locked on Breener's. I saw everything, Paul. The bones, my brother's family, maybe others. You helped murder them. Breener's composure cracked, his mouth opening to protest, but a Sergeant Levi didn't know stepped forward. Officer Breener, step aside. These are serious allegations. Breener tried to deflect, calling Levi grief-stricken, imagining things, but the officers were already moving. There, Levi said, pointing to the excavation site. They dug there. The bones are there. 2 officers climbed into the shallow hole, and within moments, one called out, Sergeant, we've got human remains here. Breener turned to run, but a warning shot rang into the sky, freezing him in place. "Nobody move," an officer shouted. The developers, halfway to their truck, stopped, their arrogance replaced by panic. One by one, Breener and the two men were handcuffed, their protests drowned out by the officer's commands. Levi's heart pounded as he told the sergeant about Mr. Davidson, the man who'd tried to buy the farmhouse. "He's part of this. He's at their office at the foot of the mountain." The sergeant nodded, dispatching units to the modern glass and steel building Levi had visited earlier. As the police convoy wound down the mountain, Levi followed, watching through the office's glass walls as officers stormed in. Davidson, still in his crisp suit, was let out in handcuffs, his face pale with shock. Papers were seized, including a journal that would crack the case wide open. At the New Holland police station, Levi sat with Detective Sarah Chun from the state police, her gray suit a stark contrast to the Amish simplicity he knew. In a small interview room, she listened as Levi recounted everything. The remembrance service, the vest and the photograph, finding it at Aaron's house, the confrontation at Jacob's farm, Breener's evasiveness, and the horrifying scene on the mountain. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the table, anchoring him against the weight of the truth. Chin set down her pen, her expression grave. "We found something at Davidson's office," she said. "A journal, detailed records of their plans. Breener wasn't just involved, he orchestrated it. He used his position, his trust in your community, to get close to Aaron. The journal says he was on their payroll for years, promised a cut of the profits from developing your valley into shopping centers and tourist traps. Your brother refused their final offer, Levi. Things escalated, and they had to silence the whole family, no witnesses." Levi felt sick, the betrayal cutting deeper than he'd imagined. Breener, who'd known his children's names, who'd eaten Miriam's bread, had lured Aaron, Miriam, and the kids to that mountain, where they were killed and buried, hidden until the developers could restart their plan a decade later. "The children, too?" Levi asked, his voice barely a whisper. Chin nodded. "To leave no trace. Your family's disappearance was meant to scare others into selling, but it drew too much attention, so they waited." The journal confirmed the bones were likely the Lapps, the only Amish family to vanish in the area. DNA tests were pending, but the truth was clear. Levi was led to a sterile evidence room, where his mother, Esther, waited, her black bonnet slightly askew, her face drawn with fear and hope. On a metal table lay evidence bags, bones tagged and cleaned, fragments of fabric, a tiny shoe that might have fit Ruth or Daisy. Esther clutched the porch photograph from the remembrance service, her fingers tracing the faces of Aaron, Miriam, and the children, smiling in a sunshine that felt a lifetime away. "It's them," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My son, my grandchildren." Levi caught her as she swayed, his own tears falling. "They're just bones now, Mom," he said, holding her tight. "But we found them. They're coming home." In that moment, the decade of wondering, of hoping, of accepting God's will without answers, gave way to a grief so raw it felt like losing them all over again. But beneath it, a flicker of relief. They knew, at last, what had happened to the family they loved. The New Holland police station buzzed with a purpose Levi Lapp had never seen before. Officers moved swiftly through the corridors, their faces set with determination, as the weight of a decade-old crime unraveled in their hands. Levi stood outside the evidence room, his mother Esther beside him, her weathered hands clutching the porch photograph of Aaron, Miriam, and their 5 children, Eli, Michael, Sarah, Ruth, and little Daisy. The truth had been laid bare. The Lapp family, murdered for refusing to sell their land, buried under a mountain meant to mock their memory. Officer Paul Breener, the trusted friend who'd betrayed them, sat in a cell, his uniform now a symbol of shame. The developers, including Mr. Davidson, faced justice for their greed, their plans to erase the Amish community for profit exposed by a single photograph, and Levi's courage. But for Levi and Esther, the answers brought no comfort, only a grief that felt as fresh as the day the Lapps vanished in 1992. In the days that followed, Levi and Esther worked with the community to bring their family home. The Amish cemetery, nestled among the fields of New Holland, became their resting place. The community gathered, their black hats and prayer coverings a quiet sea of mourning, as buggies lined the gravel path. A new hymn, composed by Minister Yoder for the Lapp family, rose in Pennsylvania Dutch, its melody soft but piercing, carrying the names of Aaron, Miriam, and the children into the autumn air. It was a song of loss, but also of return, a promise that the Lapps would rest among their people, their memory woven into the fabric of the community they'd loved. Levi stood by the graves, his hand on Esther's shoulder, feeling the weight of 10 years lift, if only slightly. The knowing was painful, but it was also a release. No more wondering if Aaron had chosen to leave, no more guilt that they'd failed him somehow. They were here, in the earth they'd tilled, and they were home. The Amish of New Holland, shaken by Breener's betrayal, began to question their trust in the outside world. For years, they'd lived by acceptance, yielding to God's will, keeping their distance from English authorities. But the Lapp family's fate showed that silence could hide evil. At a community meeting, a young man named Eli Zook, named for Levi's lost nephew, stood up, his voice steady but bold. Inspired by Levi's persistence, he proposed a community watch group, not to fight or defy, but to protect their way of life. Neighbors would check on each other, share warnings of outsiders with ill intent, and ensure no family faced pressure alone. The elders nodded, their beards gray with wisdom, and agreed. The Amish would remain true to their faith, but they'd be vigilant, their eyes open to the world's shadows. Levi returned to Aaron's farmhouse one final time, its peeling paint and sagging shutters a testament to years of neglect. But the community had a new plan for the land. Instead of selling, they transformed it into a memorial for the Lapp family, a place of reflection rather than commerce. A simple sign, carved by Levi's own hands, read Lapp Family Memorial, a quiet defiance against those who'd sought to erase them. The land would stay Amish, a patch of earth where Aaron's wood carvings, Miriam's quilts, and the children's laughter could live in memory. As Levi walked the fields, he thought of the broader fight, not just in New Holland, but across the world. Rural communities, like the Amish or indigenous groups, have long faced pressure from those who see land as profit, not heritage. In the 1990s, developers across America pushed into quiet corners, offering money for fields and forests, often with threats when refused. The Lapps had paid the ultimate price for standing firm, but their story, now uncovered, was a warning to others, a call to hold fast to what matters. As the sun set over the farmhouse, casting a golden glow across the valley, Levi felt a flicker of peace. The Lapp family's tragedy had torn the community apart, but it had also brought them together, stronger and wiser. They trusted the wrong man once, but they'd found the truth, and with it, a way to heal. Aaron's carvings, Miriam's kindness, the children's bright smiles, they weren't just bones in a mountain grave. They were the heart of New Holland, and they would never be forgotten. The Amish lived by simplicity, by faith, by community. In the face of unimaginable loss, they'd found a way to carry on, their roots deeper than any developer's greed could touch. The Lapp family story is one of heartbreak, but also resilience. How do you think communities can protect themselves from hidden threats like these? Have you heard of other stories where greed tore apart a way of life? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know what mysteries you want us to uncover next on the Crime O'Clock. For 10 years, the Amish community of New Holland, Pennsylvania, lived with a wound that refused to heal. The Lapp family, Aaron, Miriam, and their 5 children, Eli, Michael, Sarah, Ruth, and little Daisy, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a cryptic note and a decade of unanswered questions. Their farm stood empty, a silent reminder of a mystery that seemed destined to remain unsolved. But in 2002, a single photograph, tucked in a quilted album, revealed a truth hidden in plain sight. A police vest, a clue that unraveled a chilling conspiracy of greed, betrayal, and murder. Levi Lapp, driven by love for his brother and a need for answers, followed the clue to a mountain where his family's bones lay buried, victims of a trusted officer's treachery and a developer's ruthless ambition. The truth was devastating, But it was also a release, a chance for the Lapps to come home, to rest in the cemetery among their people, their memory honored by a community that refused to forget. This story isn't just about loss, it's about resilience. The Amish of New Holland faced a betrayal that shook their faith in the outside world, but they emerged stronger, more vigilant, determined to protect their way of life. Aaron's wood carvings, Miriam's kindness, the children's laughter. They live on in the fields they loved, in the simple sign marking the Lapp family memorial, carved by Levi's own hands. Their tragedy echoes beyond Pennsylvania, a reminder of the battles rural communities face against those who see land as profit, not heritage. The Lapps stood their ground, and though it cost them everything, their story became a beacon, a warning to hold fast to what matters most. On the Crime O'Clock, we uncover these stories not to dwell in darkness, but to shine a light on the strength of those who endure it. If this tale of the Lapp family gripped you, hit that like button to let us know you want more stories like this. Subscribe to the Crime O'Clock and tap the bell so you never miss a mystery from the shadows of history. Your support keeps these stories alive, so head to the link in the description to buy me a coffee. Every bit helps us bring you more untold tales. Next time, we're diving into another chilling mystery from America's heartland, where secrets buried in the past refuse to stay silent. You won't want to miss it, so stick around and keep your clock set to the Crime O'Clock. What shocked you most about the Lapp family story? Was it Breener's betrayal, the developer's greed, or the community's strength in the face of loss? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let us know what mysteries you want us to uncover next. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the shadows.